How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to give this thing a review, the TUZ-166. It's about time. I think it's... I've only got this and the Scout 800 left to do, so while I'm waiting for the next DLC, I wanted to take it for a lap around my little review course and see how it stacks up against the others. First things first, the engine. You want to go for like the one that's one from the bottom, because yeah, the bottom one's just like pretty terrible for power. As for gearboxes, I'm going to go for the freeway one. There is actually a separate gearbox called the archaic gearbox. It's only got like 3 gears, but it's apparently really good on fuel. This thing's not bad on fuel anyway, so I wouldn't really worry about it. And suspension, it's pretty cool. It's got 2 lots of options. It'd be nice if you could have those size tyres though on like at least the medium suspension. Maybe the lowest suspension is a little bit close once you've got the biggest tyres on. But yeah, I'm going with a Tune Custom. As for tyres, I'm going to give these a go for now, the muds, but I will be switching to the chained light on the Alaska maps and that, because yeah, these things just don't grip to save their life. Winch, I'm going to go for the autonomous. Adding that tyre on the back, by the way, the spare wheel, you can't hook trailers up, so just bear it in mind that in the scheme of things it's probably not really worth keeping on. It seems nigh on impossible to pop the tyres on this thing anyway in your average gameplay, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, all the little miscellaneous things to add on. There's a searchlight, I'll get to that in a little bit. It blocks your view a tiny bit when you're in first person. And yeah, as for the front bumper, to be honest, that one I believe is like sits the highest, but I actually prefer this one, and there's such a tiny amount in it, I don't think it really makes any difference. The ground clearance is pretty bloody good on this, but I prefer the look of that bumper. That one looks like a kid with its bottom lip out when it's annoyed at something, didn't get its own way. Yeah, I just prefer the look of that one, so that's the one I'm going to be going with, and as I said, I don't think it really makes any real difference on this one. Yeah, not many choices of alloys. I didn't even know, by the way, that this had this custom paint job until now. I assume it couldn't have been in the game for that long, because I've definitely painted this thing before, and yeah, I don't ever remember seeing that. So I'll have a quick look through the other paint schemes though. They're alright. It's two-tone blue, but it just comes off looking like blue really. I like that orangey and black one, but all the others like meh. But yeah, I'm gonna go for that Joker one, because like I said, I've never even seen it before. A little look around. I quite like the look of the vehicle in a funny way. It reminds me a little bit like an old corned beef can, like a Citroen CV2 or whatever they're called. I assume, to be fair, Russia probably just poached the idea and made their own Russian version. Not that I'm complaining, I don't blame them. But yeah, I think that's probably what happened. Looking around and the mirrors, they feel a bit low, like you can't really... Yeah, they don't feel like they look behind you so much as they look kind of like down at the floor behind you. But I can see my wheels, that's good. The horn, considering it's a little car, I actually quite like the horn. It's got enough oomph to it for, yeah, a little car. There is no rev counter on it. I'm going to guess it revs sort of fairly quickly, but I honestly don't know. Like, I wouldn't say the whole rev situation, the rev sound and everything else, I wouldn't necessarily say it's all in line with each other, if that makes sense. I think they're just, yeah, sometimes I remember John, the Azov John, you can rev that sometimes and it starts whistling the engine like it's revving like mad, even though it's not really. Yeah, when we set off though, I mean, I quite like that it's got a nice little bit of speed to it. Like, it definitely doesn't just drag along, but it suffers from what most of the Scouts do really, is when you start getting into rougher terrain, it just, yeah, eats away so much of the speed that I'm not sure if I'd want to go sort of scouting long term with it. Or again, I'd just take a truck, even if I was going to take this with me. And I have to say as well, considering it's a Scout, at least it's got pretty nice big chunky tyres on it, and yeah, it's not rapid through this mud. I mean, the Dolphin goes through here in high gear and doesn't really slow down, so I certainly wouldn't be taking this over other trucks really, but considering it is a Scout and everything, it's yeah, that's not bad through there. And because it is one of the smaller Scouts, I mean, you can squeeze through this gap pretty nicely. That's what she said. And yeah, that's good though. There's some of the Scouts can't get through there, which obviously that's just a arbitrary gap I used as an example, but when you're cutting through the trees and all sorts, there's a few times, especially I normally take the loaf, I've managed to squeeze the loaf for a few gaps that stuff like the Tatrin wouldn't get through, even the Lodestar, stuff like that, they're yeah, a bit too wide. So as it's a Scout test, I'm going to have a little go up this hill. I apologise, there's a little glitch there, but nothing special happened. I think the back end stepped out a little bit quickly. I might have caught the tree branches as well and it just kind of pulled me over to the right, but we're all good, we're setting off again. And yeah, as for like winding its way up, I suppose this is like a little windy mountain road. It's not too bad. I mean, there's still a nice bit of power there, but it's not kind of insane where it just dumps it all in one go and you, like, your steering goes a bit crazy. It's quite smooth. If you're driving along like the runway or whatever, for example, the one thing, and it's not necessarily against this, it's more like the characteristics of quite a few of the Scouts in particular, some of the trucks as well, especially lighter trucks, that if you're driving along and you clip your wheel on like a bit of rougher terrain, it tries to stop you so quickly that it just feels unrealistic to me, and it's yeah, they need to like tone all that stuff down really, by now anyway. I think that's where this game kind of, I don't know if I'm right on this, but I'm kind of convinced they've been dialing up, you know, the terrain resistance and all the rest of it compared to when we first got the game. And in the long run, it's the first couple of months of this game felt like the natural progression of games. You start with the basic stuff, you start unlocking the better stuff and, you know, moving around the map a bit quicker and all sorts. And I kind of got to that stage, but then I reckon around Rift, Lake Cov, somewhere around there, they started, like, I believe, adjusting. I mean, that's when the super snow came in really on Lake Cov and all that, but I just feel like they've, yeah, dialed everything up, possibly to prolong the length and time it takes to complete their game while they're trying to get the next DLC out, because they definitely seem to be falling a bit behind on that. But the end result is it just kind of, 6 months in, if anything, you want to be, like, well, reducing the terrain, not necessarily reducing the terrain resistance, but you want vehicles that do better. It's like if you get a racing game, Gran Turismo or something, you don't mind starting with the crappy slow cars, but eventually you do want to get to the Bugattis and stuff because you've learnt the mechanics of the game and all the rest of it, and you kind of want to, yeah, push things. But it got up there pretty nice. It goes for a nice little roll down here. And I have to say, to its credit, yeah, it took quite a bit of damage as it rolled down there and that, but it didn't actually wreck anything. The suspension was pretty close to being deleted, but yeah, the engine's still got half left and stuff. One thing that's a big negative for me with this, as far as taking it out with me, like where I always do with the Loaf, is the roof rack on this. I think it's got 40 fuel and 4 spare tyres or something, so yeah, it's next to useless. It's pretty good, again, if you were just going to scout with this vehicle by itself, obviously 4 spare tyres and a bit of extra fuel is not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, when you compare it to the Loaf that's got 300 repair points, 120 litres of fuel and I think 5 tyres, yeah, it's got this thing beat all day long. Like, that's why I would take a Loaf with me over this, even though this is certainly small enough to it'll fit in all the sideboards anyway, but because it doesn't weigh a lot, if I was towing this behind the Dolphin wouldn't even notice. It'd just carry on motoring along in the high range gearbox as normal. And it does say in the description, like, it says it's pretty good in mud, and it sort of is for a Scout, but I still, again, comparatively speaking, it's not going to blow your socks off or anything. But yeah, it kind of says it's not very, I suppose, utilitarian, and they've made that way on purpose. Like, they've definitely kept the roof rack pretty limited. But you can see going along here, even though this thing gets up a decent-ish speed, it weighs so little. Like, I do a big bunny hop there as I hit the rocks. And again, that's where I still would like a bit more realism in this game as far as like the weight of the vehicles and stuff goes. But yeah, I didn't even, I believe, take any damage as I was bouncing over all them rocks. The chances of deleting the suspension or popping a tyre seems pretty slim to none anyway. Even when I cartwheeled down that hill, I didn't burst any tyres. Again, the suspension was close, but I can't carry repair points on this anyway, so yeah, it's a good thing it doesn't smash itself to pieces. The anti-terrorist barricade did its job pretty well. It smashed me up pretty good, turned me around, stopped me dead. And yeah, going through here, I mean, again, it's not horrific for a Scout, but it's certainly why I wouldn't choose this when I've got trucks available. And I can kind of see why they've done that within the parameters of the game. Like I said, I'm not ragging on this car or whatever particularly, because as far as things go, it's actually not bad for a Scout, I would say. It's just, I think, the game devs in general, it's like they need to show the scouts a little bit more love. I mean, obviously I love the loaf. Loaf's a goddamn beast, but the loaf feels pretty nicely weighted. When you're driving along, it's just it feels like it's got that weight there. Whereas this thing feels like a strong gust of wind and it'd float away like a empty bag of crisps or something. You can see there when I hit the snow, it slowed me down so quickly, I ended up doing like an endo and flipping over on my roof. It's just, would that ever happen in real life? Maybe, well, you'd have to crash into an actual bank of snow, and I still don't think you'd flip like that anyway. But yeah, just how quickly and harshly the mechanics kick in and just grip your tyre and hold it back. It's like even the relatively light weight of the thing can't even cope, and it, yeah, does a roll. And again, climbing over this rock, it's weight again. The heavier stuff seems to push down in those rocks pretty well and actually grip its way over, but a lot of the smaller stuff struggles. I've gone and switched it for chained at the minute. I thought it'd get over there, but it's not far off because I used the winch for a tiny bit. Maybe if I'd gone at a bit of a better angle once I got that first tyre over, once I let it kind of like the barrier sit diagonally between the axles, yeah, it didn't really have the guts to climb its way back up. And yeah, for this snow turn, I mean, it climbed up that little bit pretty well, but then on the top of here, you kind of get what the game treats as like the super snow, and yeah, you're just a few miles an hour again. And it's just, to me, at that speed, there's not really a whole lot of like excitement going on. There's just, you know, rocks aren't sort of approaching you at speed to where you've got to avoid them and all sorts. It's so slow and neutered that, yeah, nothing's going to happen when I'm driving this fast. I'm not going to suddenly be like, oh shit. It's like, it reminds me of like Austin Powers, where that guy's screaming as the steamroller's rolling towards him, and obviously it takes so long he has to take another breath and carry on screaming, and it just gets a bit like that, where it's like, if you can see 100 meters ahead of you or whatever, you just know that you will be there eventually, but it's going to be very slow, very plain. You know what's going to happen. You're not going to tip. You're not going to swerve and crash and roll, or there's just, yeah, there's not enough going on really. I'd rather a truck where I can add a little bit of risk into the situation by adding a bit of speed. And again, because the trucks are more weighted, you slam into the terrain and they react to it more. This thing, because it is so light, it just kind of bounces off as if there's nothing really going on. And again, I'm not really hating on this thing. I actually think it's pretty cool as far as the scouts go. I mean, there's not much use to it for me. That's why it doesn't appear in a lot of my videos. But every now and then I do take it for a little blast down the roads or blast down the runway or whatever. I've not really used it as much on maps like Imandra because there's not really... Yeah, Imandra's just not a very... I don't know. It's not a very inviting map to everything, or to most things except like the best trucks in this game that have just got the weight, the power, whatever combination it is together that helps them motor through the terrain. Most stuff sort of does struggle on Imandra, really. I'm definitely liking the sound of these two maps they're supposed to be releasing when the next phase of DLC comes out. I still don't know when it's coming out though, but I'm not too sure how good it's looking to be released by Halloween. I have to say though, this thing, it got over the wall, which is pretty nice. I mean, not everything can, but to this thing's credit, it's got pretty big tyres for its size. It's also got that raised custom suspension, so yeah, ground clearance, like jumping up over them pipes and then over the wall, it did pretty well. And going through the trees as well, it was a little bit slow because of the snow really, more than the trees, but yeah, it's very narrow, so as far as squeezing through those trees, it's a lot of the wide stuff that gets caught on those branches. And yeah, you can see from the peak of the mountain, it doesn't bottom out or anything, so that's another good thing. But like I say, to me, by now, I'd sort of say I wish they'd either sort the mechanics of the game out or add, I suppose, what would essentially amount to easier maps, but just more explorable, fun maps. It's like going 2 mile an hour in some situations is fun and part of the game, but when it's just that's the permanent default setting, unless you're on a road, it's just kind of like, well, I'll go and pick something else that actually has like a range of behaviours in different terrain. Yeah, I mean the turning test is always going to nail it anyway. These scouts have got a pretty small turning circle compared to most stuff. Just got me one cargo. It's the last cargo that tipped off when yeah, I was doing the Don 71. I have to say, as much as I do like the Don 71, I would definitely say this is better overall. Still not great at cutting through there though. I got to about that same ridge that they all do if they're going to give up, and yeah, it gave up. Had to use winches to get all the way through there. But you can see that slow speed I was doing then. Again, it's just another thing where it doesn't bother me or anything. It's just you've... If I was talking to the devs, it's like you've just... I don't know, you've added something to the game, and then you've kind of priced it back out the game by the fact that it can't participate in a lot of the game features unless you're going 2 miles an hour, which is not something I want to do for 8 hours solid. Going through this water though, I didn't even drop it into high. Yeah, it was actually doing alright in the auto gearbox. And on these little snowy trails, you can see as soon as I just touch that side of snow, even though it's not very deep at all, probably not even getting up to the actual alloy of the wheel, but yeah, it just grips you and that's it. But once you're on these little snowy tracks, yeah, it's not too... It actually does wind up to speed pretty nicely. As far as mods go for this thing, I don't know if I had the choice. I suppose, yeah, a big thing would be the weight. And maybe tyre stats. Like, I don't know how easy it is to change the tyre stats. As I said, someone was telling me the day that they were putting like Tatran tyres on the Yar. I don't know how easy it would be to just change the coding of the Yar tyres, for example, or this. Or if it'd just be easier to take these off, yeah, and let it have Tatran tyres. But I'll be interested to see how that plays out when they actually do add mods. I cut that bit out because again it was just like 30 seconds to a minute just to get up that little hill. Quick bit of interior view. You can see the searchlight is like in the bottom left. That kind of blocks that bottom left. It's not the end of the world. I don't personally use interior view a hell of a lot anyway. Every now and then I have a little look around in there, but yeah, it's nothing crazy to me. But if you are someone that does like a lot of interior gameplay, then that searchlight doesn't really offer that any many benefits. It's just for the sake that it was there, and it's not that common, so I stuck it on. And yeah, I mean, right now, again, for a scout, this isn't bad. It's just, it's sad that that's the state of the situation. I mean, even with the loaf, I think the loaf is brilliant, but I don't use it in its traditional role. It's like, as far as going scouting with the loaf, I'd have no... I actually think the loaf is a good scout, because the fact that it doesn't tip very often, it can go up just about every single mountain and that. I know there's like, people say with the loaf and these scouts, like, oh, they're not very good in that deep mud, but if you actually... What percentage of the entire game is deep mud? You're talking a couple of percent. Like, the vast majority of what you're doing is driving up hills and mountains and bits and bobs, like dirt roads, all sorts, so it just never really bothers me or affects me. Like, pretty much everywhere that has deep mud, I can skirt around the edge with a loaf anyway. But yeah, the point I'm saying, though, is that the loaf to me is just kind of like a backpack. I stick it in with me. It's a little mate, little mate that gets you by on this game, but the fact that it's got a very decent amount of repair points and all the rest of it, it's just handy to have that with you. It's always better to have a loaf with you than not. Whereas this thing, yeah, playing on its own like this, just going around for a little lap, but there just wouldn't be any reason to tow it behind me, because I'm not even sure if you can get a smaller, less useful roof rack than this thing has. Like I say, 40 litres of fuel. And, well, the 4 tyres is 4 tyres, but yeah, it's just, it ain't anything to write home about. Cutting across this rock bridge, though, again, pretty cool, because it's got nice, decent ground clearance at the front. Now, I've not specifically put them next to each other, but I imagine this thing's probably got better ground clearance than stuff like the Collobs. And yeah, once we're on the little snowy track, it was fine, but as soon as you get onto the deep snow, it's like, nope, back to 1 mile an hour again. And I didn't even drive all the way. I did drive a bit further than I left in that video, but yeah, there's no way I'm driving. Like, it'll take me 5 or 10 minutes just to drive along that pipeline. It's something I wouldn't do in real life on my own, just game time or whatever. I'd recover the vehicle and go and bring a truck back. Cutting through this little Devil's Mud section, it was actually going not too bad at first, and even here, all things considered, I've finally put it down in the low gear now. I don't really think the high-low and everything makes a whole lot of difference. I know I've not got the high-low option at the minute, but I've tried them before. It starts to wheel spin by that point. Yeah, it got through the mud alright, all things considered, but you'd be better off skirting along the edge. You'd even be better off just flinging a winch out, and you'd probably pull yourself through the mud quicker than this thing could drive through it, so yeah. Up in the mountains though, once this snow stops being this stupid super snow and it starts behaving more like normal snow, it drives along pretty nicely. Which is again my point, if you had a map where you just got rid of all that excessively slow shit, it'd be quite cool flying along at even this speed. It's like, I don't need it to be like a race car, but you know, I've not been specifically off-roading before, like I've gone out specifically to do that, but I've been in a lot of cars and 4x4s and stuff, just, I don't know, as it happens, you go for a bit of off-roading, go down some dirt tracks and all sorts of stuff. I've grown up in the countryside and that, yeah, I've been in enough vehicles that can handle going more than 2 mile an hour in mud to know that this just isn't really that realistic in the end. I kind of forgot I turned a little bit too far to the left then and it tipped. Overall, I would say there is a little bit more weight in the chassis than the roof, but it's a similar problem to the Don 71, and again, it's just lightness. There's not enough weight there in the first place to be added like high, low or otherwise. Once I aimed it straight up the hill there, I mean, it clawed up there, no real problem to be fair. And so even now, as long as you don't kind of flick it in to where it can kind of carry what little weight it's got either. Yeah, it did alright along the little peak of that mountain. I normally roll down here anyway, so I wouldn't say that's anything too crazy. As for tipping it back to its wheels, by the way, mixed results to be honest. Sometimes it, as you've seen there, it tipped back to its wheels pretty nice and easily. Other times it just drags itself along the floor sideways, which, yeah, I've never been keen on that feature with the game. That's probably one of the big reasons I don't drive the R87 as much as I would, because it's all fun and games when it's going well, but as soon as you roll the bloody thing, it's such a nightmare to get back to its wheels that, yeah, the 5 minutes you can spend trying to get it back to its wheels, I could just go and bring something else in that time. So for this one, I've got a fuel tank with me, because, yeah, sod bringing one of those, what they call, scout cargo trailer. Yeah, I'm not even used to saying that word. It's an unneeded word in this game. I mean, it's pretty cool that they've got stuff like the F750 now, that you can at least have one slot of cargo on the back. I was going to say same with the Taz and Warthog. To be honest, both the Taz and Warthog for trucks suffer from the same kind of thing this does. There's just not enough weight there, at least with the F750. For whatever reason, that just feels pretty balanced and pretty realistic. All things considered though, it did actually get through there. You can hear a lot of gear clunking. Like, it's me tapping L1 really, but yeah, there's a lot of clunking every time you're just trying to go up the gears. Once I'm back on the dirt road though, picks up the speed alright. Sorry, there's a little glitch there, as usual. It has to do it at the worst possible moment. But to be fair, it was an uneventful drive. It's just, we can say, yeah, it's not bad. It's actually more stable, I would say, than, again, the Don 71. I flew down there. I cut that corner a bit early. I didn't quite realise that there was still rocks to be driven over there. And yeah, of course, send in the goddamn professional. There's one thing I noticed, I mean, other than the fact, you can see with the weight difference, the loaf just slaps it out the way like it's not even there. But when it comes to tipping it over, I tried to winch it when I was facing that way with a loaf, and it just dragged it along sideways. And then I tried tipping it like this, and it's just being a little bit more awkward. So I tried to push it over like that, and again it just slid around. But I've noticed this before. As soon as I push the trailer instead, trailer just flips back to its wheels, and then it carries the TUZ back over to its wheels with it. It's like, why can't vehicles flip as easily as that trailer does? Because it's not the first time I've tried doing that when I've flipped something, just rammed the trailer instead, and they're a lot easier for going back to their wheels for whatever reason. That's why you always keep a loaf around though. And again, to be fair, going through here, I know I don't need to because I'm not going to grab cargo, but it's kind of the old route I took with some of them, so just my own curiosity. And yeah, I mean, it's not doing bad through here. Like I say, all things considered, with the current setup of the Scouts, this is it's got to be, yeah, fairly up the list of the Scouts. But I still don't see the benefit of bringing it over a truck. Getting a nice little trailer collection going back here though. I wonder if it'll glitch the map again. Clean them all up for me. So even going up here, I mean, that's pretty decent. Certainly feels a bit more planted. And again, that's all I'm asking for, is that even that kind of speed is fine. I'm not, as much as I'd like a rally car type thing in this game, just to experience that side of the mechanics. But yeah, as far as just cruising around, I don't need things to be going 80 mile an hour or whatever. It's just, yeah, this sort of speed is like reasonable. You feel like you're getting somewhere. And yeah, walked up here pretty effort free really. I didn't even need to send the loaf into its little loaf hole to winch the thing up there. And that was all just in auto as well. That I didn't. I assume it probably would have got up there in high gear. I know the loaf can, even when it's towing a trailer. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty decent. I certainly can't knock it for going up there. Of course, then you get nailed by the mud mechanics at the top. I've even believe, yeah, I've got to put the muds back on. So yeah, I mean, that's why in most videos you see I usually wear the chain tyres. It's because the chain to me are just the best fit and forget tyres. Like, I don't really see what I get from the muds. They're not all that amazing in mud. They might have a slight few percent advantage over the chained in mud, but it's like, again, a lot of the maps aren't specifically mud. And just the fact that the thing doesn't grip to save its life on ice and on rocks, it's crap and all that, it's just, yeah, generally speaking, I go for the chain. But I do like the muds on this. Out of most things, I would be more likely to keep the muds on this, but more for looks wise really. Little mate, yeah, the all things considered, it lapped that little quarry and everything pretty hassle free. See, again, I just forgot. I started driving off, suddenly realised now that, oh yeah, shit, I got the muds on. Drift sideways, can't do anything about it, tip over, and it's just my time wasted. And it's like, yeah, I'll leave the chained on because the chained are never going to do that to me in mud or anywhere else or ice or whatever. So it's just like, overall they're hassle free. I've never not been able to get somewhere with chained on that I've then gone back and put muds on and been able to get there. It's like, if I struggle on a hill with chained, they struggle in mud anyway, or with mud, sorry, so I don't really see the advantage. Yeah, going across the ice as well, because it doesn't weigh a lot at all. I did actually manage to punch down a little bit there, but it clawed itself out of there, which is pretty respectable. But mostly I drove up and down here, and yeah, any vehicle with any like particular weight to it, certainly most trucks would just punch through this ice without issue. There's only a few things that can actually drive along the length of this breakable ice. I mean, there's that new Apache. Again, that's what, like, I know one of the selling points, so to speak, of the Apache was like, oh, it can go across ice, but it's like, it's not unique though. This can go across ice. The Marshall, Cairn Marshall can go across ice. The Don 71 went across ice. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is other stuff. Even stuff with the custom muds tend to go pretty well over ice. So yeah, I still don't know why they've made that Apache so shit. They kind of brought the hate upon themselves, because not only did they add DLC or microtransactions that they said they wouldn't until after the season pass, but then they made it crap. So it's like, now you're going to have everyone who doesn't want the microtransactions, understandably, especially when they said it. But then now you're going to, everyone who even bought the thing is just like, you know, well, this is crap. Put it this way, if you were allowed a little 5-minute test drive of the Apache before you had to decide if you bought it or not, I bet 9 out of 10 people who own it now probably wouldn't have bought it. But I've not used it since I've done the videos, and I'm not upset. I mean, it was up to me. I didn't have to buy it. I certainly at least appreciate they didn't try and sneak some different game mechanics in with it, so you're not losing anything if you don't buy it. I certainly wouldn't recommend buying it, because it's just boring. There's nothing... It looks cool, and that's it. But yeah, it can't tow trailers and all sorts. Anyway, just quickly, I was flying along. I was seeing if I could put it into high range, do the old Jeff special. Kind of the first time, I got a little drift on the go, and it was certainly quicker than it would otherwise be if you put it in a high range. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's too successful at doing it. Particularly, you might get different results on the PC, but because I've got diff locks and all-wheel drive that I can't turn off, it never seems to work well in my PS4 version. Stuff that I can turn at least the diffs off, preferably all-wheel drive, and then yeah, they do the old Jeff special all day long. Little jump off the cliff, landed on my nose. It kind of sits in the vertical mechanics of that, like a lot of them do. Sentin Dolphin and Loaf, absolutely nailed it. The Loaf, it was a close one this time, but you see, goddamn horse of a vehicle. Even if it's close, it don't matter. Winning is winning, by an inch or a mile. See, it's not letting me start the engine just because the snorkel's on the right hand side, and that's the side that's in the water. It catches me out a few times on things, but again, properly a quick Loaf, you just can't stop it. See, again though, some kind of pull mode, like dolphin's trying to swim towards me. See, I just left this bit in as me not only reversing out the water, but I'm planted enough on the ground to be pushing that TUZ around when I'm still 3/4, yeah, like deep underwater basically. Whereas you'll see with this thing, despite the fact that it's got a snorkel all the way up to the roof, it goes alright up to a point. You can probably get the water up to about the wheel arches and probably be alright. But yeah, by about now, I'm basically raising up on the suspension. I'm kind of just barely scraping along the floor, and I get to about here, yeah. Floor, ground. And yeah, it's having none of it, so I fling a winch out to one of the naturally occurring trailers. It actually keeps the nose pretty low as I'm winching it in, but once I let off, at least the side that's floating out the water a bit more is the side with the snorkel on. But I mean, yeah, I ain't going anywhere. You can see it's floating in the air, so I could possibly winch it through the river if I took, yeah, the dolphin with me, but on its own, nope. Give it a little slap. Yeah, you see how it's sat up on its nose then, like it doesn't want to drop down to its wheels very eagerly. And some of the vehicles, like that's not the only one, but as I said before, they almost have like a horizontal plane and then a vertical plane, and once you're in, say, the vertical plane, it kind of holds you up a lot more than it would in real life, and then you just kind of have to slowly watch it tip, and then it'll sort of slam back down to the horizontal plane. But yeah, anyway, I mean, that's a lap of the course. As far as stacking up against the others, considering the within relative to the game, like, it is a pretty decent scout. I just think overall, by now, I wish they'd up the ability of the scouts, because if I'm going to take a scout, I'm already basically sacrificing like the hauling ability. So it's kind of like, what do I get in return? Like, if I was going to take a truck scout, well, in fact, I'll rephrase that. That's why I take a truck when I go and scout a new map, because I might get to the other side of the map, and then there's a mission that I've got to haul a bit of cargo, and it's like, I've got that ability with a truck. And I'm certainly not hauling in a little 2-slot shitty cargo trailer around with this thing everywhere, or any Scout really. So yeah, it's just kind of like, if I'm going to sacrifice that hauling ability, I'd like to get something more back from it. I'd like to motor around at a bit of a higher speed and feel like it smashes its way through a lot of the terrain better than it does. There's a little description there of just saying like it put the right engine and everything in it, and it's a little mud-eating machine, which I'm not quite sure I'd go that far. But yeah, all things considered, it's fairly decently balanced as far as Scouts go in this game, so it's worth a little go. If you sold the one that you had, I'd get it back and yeah, have a little laugh with it, but don't expect anything too serious. So yeah, that's about it for today though. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.